The advice would basically be the opposite of the mistake that I did. Is you gotta get the strategy right. Just be very honest with your skills and with your knowledge and the industry that you're very passionate about, and you gotta get it right. You gotta get all the components organized well, and it's okay if you have a few components that are not really fitting in well, but the major ones you gotta get them right. And if you're not, don't move forward into execution too early, because you'll be stuck with something that's very hard to be changed later on.
Hi everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Boris Krastev. And Boris was originally from Bulgaria and went to study in Denmark at about age of 18, studied sales and marketing and also quantitative mathematics. Also tried a startup to bring people from Bulgaria to Denmark. And then from that startup, moved over to another one. Took about 3 years to close the first company with that startup. And then raised some money from a big media company. Has been seeing growth for the past 3 years. More recently moved to Chicago, and has been continuing his journey from there. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Boris.
Hi, Devin. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Absolutely excited to have you on. So I took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30-second version of it. But why don't we unpack that a bit? So
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in Bulgaria.
Sure. Yeah. So it was very condensed. So we'll try to bring in more details so people can hear more, because I do believe I have quite a unique story that could be interesting. So I grew up in Bulgaria, and I studied in high school in Bulgaria, and at the age of 18. So my background is not very traditional for people in tech, and I believe what makes it unique, because I come from surprisingly agricultural background. So by the age of 18, 19, first before going to Denmark, actually I went to the UK, where I worked on the fields picking up strawberries, because I needed money to study at university in Denmark. So for about 3 months, I worked there, and it was very interesting experience. And actually, I do believe these, because I'll share more details about my background, and I do believe these experiences in non-tech sectors actually shaped me to be a much better founder in tech, because it brings a totally different look at how things should be done, and picks up practices from established industries that I do believe are helping in organizing processes and structure and working with people in a disciplined approach. So yeah, I was in the UK for 2 years, for 2 months, 2 to 3 months, and then I moved to Denmark, where I studied sales, marketing, and management, and then I studied quantitative finance. I've always been very, very keen on doing business, and it was only because I needed capital that I didn't start earlier, but that was my intention, to be always an entrepreneur. I never had the ambition to work in a company for somebody else, or like work in a corporation with my education. It was in the back of my mind that I want to do a business. Quite frankly, I studied because at the beginning I studied because I thought it would be a good opportunity to build up skills. And I worked, different jobs. I probably worked in, I always like to say that I've worked in most industries besides restaurants and doing these odd jobs in restaurants, but I worked as a student pretty much in anything else. So I have a ton of non-tech experience. But the good thing is, while studying in Denmark, I managed to save about $30,000 from these odd jobs that I actually used the capital to fund my full-time entrepreneurship journey in 2017. So from around 2011 to 2017, I was studying and working odd jobs, and only 2014 I was looking into it, actually tourism. So Bulgaria has many beautiful places, and I had a partner whose mom was running several hotels in Bulgaria. So she offered discounts, if we bring tourists from Denmark to Bulgaria. And especially because Denmark doesn't have any mountains, we felt like it would be appealing offering to people in Denmark to explore the beautiful mountains in Bulgaria. It was a very interesting experience because I learned how much I actually know. And I learned that even though I studied very good university, top 100 in the world, I was very theoretical, not really practical. So I realized how much I have to work on myself in order to make it through with the business. And essentially, while studying and doing this part-time business for about a year and a half, I learned what it takes actually to build or like get started with a business, that it's significantly harder than it looks. And you need a good partner, which is essential if you want to make it through. And like small things like don't register a company until you get your first customers. Because with the tourist business, as a 22 years old, 23 years old, I thought the first thing is to go and open your company. And this is what it means to be an entrepreneur. Very quickly, I realized that this is wrong, obviously, and it's associated with unnecessary costs. Also, the founding structure, I figured it's going to play a big role in building a company. I had a partner where we had a 50-50 split, but basically I was doing all the work and he wasn't contributing with anything apart from having his mom offering us discounts for the hotels. So it was obvious it's not going to work out. And I also figured, wait, you cannot do it part-time. You're gonna go all in that journey if you want to be successful. So interesting experience. Back then I had the option to study abroad, maybe going to the US, an exchange program, but I felt like putting in, let's say, 5-10,000 would be better to do it a business, so you can get a first-hand experience of what it means to be an entrepreneur. So by the time of 2017, I had an offer at university to stay and do a PhD there because I was doing well academically. I published a few articles, research articles as a student at university, but I was pretty much done. So by the end of 2015, I was really, really eager to start doing business and be an entrepreneur. And because of my experience with the tourist industry, I decided that I would like to focus on tech because I saw how much more scalable it is, and just there's just more opportunities in being in tech, and I liked some areas in tech that would match my skills. So by 2017.
So let me ask this one question before you get to the more recent business. So you started out doing the tourist business, you learned a lot, had the partner, didn't necessarily, work out perfectly, but, I think that's part of that journey.
Sure.
But, kind of, was there a tipping point, or how did you kind of figure out? Because you said, hey, can't do this part-time, figured out when we should have formed the business and how to pick a partner and a lot of those. But was there kind of a tipping point to say, hey, this business isn't going anywhere, or I need to move on or go to a different direction, or kind of how did you figure out when to phase out that part of your journey and move on to the next part?
So we had about a year and a half where I was doing the university. I was working part-time. I paid jobs, odd jobs to get some money in the bank account, and also doing the tourism business. And so it was quite challenging to get it started. I felt like this at the beginning because in Denmark, because of the crisis in 2008, 2009, a lot of agencies that were operating as tourist agents, they had taken money from customers, but because of the sudden issues in the financial markets, actually they went under with the money that was spent on touristic packages for tourists. And in Denmark, they set up this fund that you need to register. It was actually operating, still is operating kind of as an insurance firm, and it was a quite tough to get registered because they were asking for $100,000 initial payment to register in the fund to give you a license to be part of the agency. There were workarounds legally that I went around it, and I managed to get us registered. But by the time it took us about a year in doing part-time work to get us registered in that fund, was starting to look for customers and setting up the website and the offering and so on. So we planned a year ahead that we'll focus on February 2016, I believe, or maybe 2015, because you need to organize groups of people to go in February. And it was obvious that we only had a few customers, and I didn't see that much activity from my partner. And I asked him for very simple things to get done, and he didn't do them. And I was like, done. I don't want to do this journey if it's going to have equal equity. And back in the time, I didn't really have the necessary skills to renegotiate. And I felt like I didn't want to be stuck in a business with a partner that's we're not having equal contribution. So that was the tipping point. And also because I realized actually that I need to improve my skills a lot, and also be full-time on it. And I was still having about a year and a half of studies, and I didn't want to drop out because I wanted to finish and then focus full-time. Because I knew once you get out of university, it's really hard to come back. And I'm the type of person who is a process person. So everything with me is a process. So I felt like I need to finish that process before jumping on a new process. So yeah.
No, makes perfect sense, and it sounds like it was a good or learned a lot as you figured out how to kind of transition to that. So now you make that exit, you kind of finish the studies, you say, okay, coming out of studies full time, going to jump into a new endeavor full time and kind of do that, learn the lessons along the way from the previous venture. Kind of how did you figure out what was that next venture or what you were going to do next as you're coming out of school and looking for your full time endeavor?
Right. So as I mentioned, everything with me is a process. So there was not really a solid idea of what I wanted to do. I just wanted to build a great company, and I wanted to have the right fundamentals, and I wanted to stay ambitious. So with my current partner, who we're running it remote more, we were talking about the agency, and we were kind of friends of some time. And he was expressing opinion that he also wants to start a business. And actually, before we started in 2017 October, I was trying to convince him that to join me and build a company. He said no twice, but on the third time I managed to convince him to quit his job, because I said, anyway, I'm gonna start, and you're welcome to join, because I don't have no intentions of going to work for corporates. Nothing bad with it. It's just I'm the type of person who likes to have autonomy to learn as quick as possible. Because for me, startups have never been about money, and entrepreneurship has never been about money. Has always been associated with growth and skills and growing you as a personality. So I was focused more on that part. Just build your skills, be a great person, and eventually your product will be great as well, and your company will be great. But it all starts with you, with your skills, with your knowledge, with your capabilities. And I just don't think I'll be able to get the same learning curve in corporations. Maybe there are some there, but I just didn't believe it at the time. So in 2017 we started, but we didn't really have any idea. So the first step was actually to sit down 2 weeks, explore ideas, and look for businesses. So there was no idea. It was like, we want to build a company, and we want to do it for the right reasons, but it was a 2 years journey to find the right idea. So it wasn't a look, I found this opportunity in the market and we're gonna work on it. No. Uh,
No, makes sense. And so, and I think that's a lot of times you're saying, hey, we've got the right team members, we got the people we want to work with. Now let's figure out, kind of what that business is and what that will look like and what we want to do going forward. So now you guys sit down, you brainstorm for a couple of weeks, kind of look at the different businesses and what
right.
was kind of the business plan, or what did you guys settle on as far as where you wanted to go?
Well, we just we generated 1,000 ideas. We were literally brainstorming for 2 weeks, ideas, and then scoring them. And then we'll pick up the ideas that we thought are interesting to us based on our skills and our personal preferences. And at the time,
Mm,
I was having problem with the labor market in Denmark, meaning that I don't think it was, maybe still is not that very open to people from abroad to get integrated in the labor market. So I was pretty pissed about it. So I said, we don't have much experience. Let's just focus on an industry that we think is interesting for us, and over time we'll find a great opportunity. And that was the labor market. And anything with HR, labor market, giving more opportunities to people sounded it still is very exciting for me. And we started at the beginning. We wanted to have like the first idea we worked on was called Skill Achieve in 2017. So it was an idea that would quantify the skills of people. So the idea was that we would be able to have an objective score for everyone that you can showcase to your employers, and people would know that, look, you have the skills. So in this way, you would remove bias from the interviews. It would be focused on skills and not really on soft parts like where you're from, which also
mm,
matters in some ways, but that was our aspiration, right? To remove bias in the labor market. So maybe 6, 7 months, we didn't really, well, we did produce the initial MVP, but we're really struggling to get any customer feedback because I didn't have any network. So when I started building company, I had 200 connections on LinkedIn, which was mostly co-students from university. So, and yeah, we didn't get much traction. We felt like the only place where we could sell our software was in investment banks, because whatever customer feedback we got, it was actually banking companies that expressed interest in working with us. But by meaning express interest, we got some positive traction either through outbound or some other form. And we felt like it was very hard to break through the banking sector because it's very conservative. So we
mm.
somehow decided to move on with another idea. And when we're doing the skills, also the other thing is that most companies didn't really need the testing of skills. They needed more people. So in 2017, 2018, there was a really, really strong demand for people. And they said, look, we don't want skills tested. We just want more CVs. We want more people. And so then we pivoted to an idea. The startup was called Job Disrupt. And Job Disrupt was a kind of an AI algorithm, because that's our background in data, anything data and algorithms. So it was like in 2018, there wasn't that much hype for AI as it is now. But essentially, an AI algorithm in its core is these are regression models, right? So we built a regression model that would read the CVs and then will match to the job description, so the job openings. And
Mm.
that was the idea. So we tried to build an MVP where we'll get a data bank with CVs and we'll match them to job descriptions, and we'll get money from matching or from placing candidates. It wasn't really certain how it would play out. So we started doing sales with this initial concept, and we found that there was pretty strong demand for more CVs, but at the time, those companies also that we talked with in Denmark, they were saying us, you are from Bulgaria. We know there are great developers in Bulgaria, and why don't you just connect us with more developers in Bulgaria? We don't need them to be here in Denmark. We just want to work with them remotely. And it made sense for us. Actually, we found this idea quite attractive in 2018 because we felt that if we bring more job opportunities to people, regardless of their location, then we're doing great thing. And and yeah, we did some experiments. Again, everything we did was done in a trial-based approach. So we'll see conversions and we'll kind of follow the statistics that we get in how we should move forward because we don't have that much industry insight. So we had to learn as we go and develop our knowledge and skills. So by 2018, we found remote more in somewhere around the summer. By founding, I mean, don't register a company, but like this is the time when we started working on the business. And yeah, the initial concept actually was connecting developers to companies in Denmark. But Denmark turned out to be, apart from those initial customers that we talked with, Danish companies weren't really interested in working remotely. But nevertheless, companies from abroad, like meaning other markets, they were interested to do that. So we got some pretty nice traction in the very beginning. We had some nice metrics in terms of signups and like developer signups, really cool conversion rates, and also company signups, and initial traction was great. So, but the problem is that by the time of 2018, the initial capital that we had, the 30,000, we were pretty much running out of it. So we had a few months, and we needed to find new jobs, obviously, because it wasn't working well financially. Skill-wise, great. We learned a ton of new things. I felt like every week was one step forward. You were improving and learning. So by 2018, we started looking for funding, any form of it, so we could continue with remote more. And then after hundreds of meetings, emails, just approaching with investors, we got connected to Axel Springer and Porsche in Berlin. And as I mentioned, you know, it's pretty large media company, but it had a nice setup where they'll fund startups in Europe and just get them on a venture track. And yeah, so by 2019, beginning of...
So yeah, so oh yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say maybe and just because we're starting to get towards the end of the podcast, I don't want to cut off your journey too much. So you figure out the concept, figure out the idea with the partner, you kind of hone in and you pivot and adjust a bit, you get some investor dollars, you know, kind of start to see that traction. Now catch us a little bit up to kind of where's it at, you know, kind of where's it gone and where's it at today?
Right. So in 2019, we went to the accelerator in Germany, and then by 2019 we released the initial software, like a real product that we released to the market. And since the release, it was great success actually. So we got initial traction from 2019 until last year. We've been growing 300% year over year, and it was just initial traction was great. Then in 2021, as you mentioned, I moved to Chicago because I was fundraising, and the local investors expressed interest in fundraising, or like giving us more funds so we could continue the growth. And just the last 3 years were great, and we've been having great progress in terms of product and company development. Now we are about 25,000 users and around 1,500 registered companies. So we're small company of 15 people, but all remote, and we're just seeing great progress.
Awesome. No, that sounds like it's been continuing to grow steadily and continuing to get traction and going in the right direction. So that definitely sounds like a great place to be. So now, as we've kind of caught up to the present day of your journey, it's a great time to jump or transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
I think the worst business decision I ever made is always Not always, but it was a strategy planning at the beginning of the company. So so much of your foundational elements of your business are defining your future growth and future of your business. You got to get the strategy right. I don't think I got the right strategy in some components, specifically resource allocation and matching resources versus resource needed versus resource that can be acquired in order to fund the requirements of the business. You got to do the right calculations of what you can do with the resources you have, and in order to iterate the product. Since you're operating as a startup, you got to do these iterations very quickly, and you need to have the right structure to do it. So strategy, like I don't think I got the right strategy from the very beginning, and so many things I managed to change, but some things are still persistent and they require attention, and they're very, very hard to change. So you got to make the right strategic decisions at the very beginning of the company.
No, it definitely makes sense. And I think that is, sometimes to figure out the right strategy and the direction and what to do, you don't always know when you're starting out. And I think even after you've been doing it for a while, it's still one of those mistakes that you have to continue to pivot and adjust and learn via mistakes and continue forward. So great lesson to learn from. Second question that I now always ask is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I mean, the advice would basically be the opposite of the mistake that I did. Is you gotta get the strategy right. Just be very honest with your skills and with your knowledge and the industry that you're very passionate about, and you gotta get it right. You gotta get all the components organized well, and it's okay if you have a few components that are not really fitting in well, but the major ones, you gotta get them right. And if you're not, don't move forward into execution too early, because you'll be stuck with something that's very hard to be changed later on. And do the thinking part well. I know doing a business plan could sound boring and outdated, but for some people, it could help in refining their thinking to figure out what they haven't thought through, and not really showing it to investors, but for your own thinking purpose. Get the thinking part right before you invest money and execute as fast as possible.
No, I think that's a great takeaway and a great piece of advice. So awesome. Well, so with that, now we are wrapping towards the end of the episode. If people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's
Sure.
the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
They can reach out to me on email at Boris Krastev. That's spelled Krast Estango EV at remotemore.com. You can just Google my name and you'll find me on LinkedIn as well, where I'm most active there. And yeah, I'm happy to help in any way possible. Also, founders that are looking for answers at the very beginning, I'm happy to share my piece of advice, share my experience. So I'm pretty open-minded and helpful. So don't stress too much to reach out.
Perfect. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So
yeah.
Well, with that, thank you again, Boris, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of your listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguests.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Thank you again, Boris, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.